Captain Vexana stood on the bridge of her ship and looked at the stars. They were cold and far away. Her ship, the Cathara, moved slowly through empty space. The engine made a low humming sound, but it was not the strong hum it used to make. Everything was wrong. She touched the scales on her neck. They felt dry and rough. All Zelani had green scales that should feel smooth and cool. But when there was no water, the scales became hard and painful. Vexana had not drunk water for 2 days. She was saving what little they had for her crew. "Captain," said Navigator Crixon. He walked up to her with slow, careful steps. His yellow eyes looked tired. "The water is almost gone." Vexana closed her eyes. She already knew this. The water recycling machines had broken 6 days ago. Pirates had attacked their ship and damaged the main systems. They had driven off the pirates, but the damage was done. Now 47 Zelani were going to die in space. "How much do we have left?" she asked. 2 containers. Maybe enough for 1 more day if we are very careful." 1 day. Vexana looked at her crew working on the bridge. They moved slowly now. Young Takara at the communication station had to stop and rest every few minutes. Her breathing was quick and shallow. Engineer Mortok kept touching his throat. All the signs were there. Her people were dying. The Zelani were proud. They had built great cities among the stars. Their technology was better than most other species. Other aliens looked up to them with respect and fear. But none of that mattered now. They needed water, and they had none. "Any response to our distress signal?" Vexana asked. Crixon shook his head. "The nearest Zelani ship is 12 days away. Too far. 12 days. They would all be dead in 2 days, maybe 3 if they were lucky." Vexana had seen Zelani die from lack of water before. It was not quick or peaceful. First came the terrible thirst. Then the scales would crack and bleed. The body would shake and burn with fever. At the end, there was only pain. She could not let that happen to her crew. "But what choice did she have, Captain?" Takara called out. Her voice was weak. "I am getting a signal. Not Zelani." Vexana walked over to the communication station. On the screen she could see a small dot of light. It was a ship, but not one of theirs. "What species?" she asked. Takara worked at her controls with shaking fingers. "It shows. Human. Human." Vexana felt her stomach twist. Humans were young and wild. They had only been in space for a short time. Most Zelani thought they were dangerous and unpredictable. They fought wars among themselves and asked too many questions. They did not understand proper behavior between species. But they had water. Humans always carried extra water on their ships. Everyone knew this. "How far?" Vexana asked. 4 hours at their current speed, Crixon said. He had moved to the navigation station. "It is a small ship, probably a cargo vessel. 4 hours. Her crew might last that long." "Maybe." Vexana stood silent for a long time. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly. They all knew what she was thinking. To ask humans for help would bring shame to every Zelani on the ship. It would break the honor codes that their people had followed for thousands of years. But the alternative was death. "Captain," Mortok said. He had come up from the engine room. His usually bright green scales were dull and gray. "The backup systems are failing too. Even if we fix the main recycler, we need water to restart it." No choice. Vexana had no choice at all. She walked to the captain's chair and sat down slowly. Her body hurt from the lack of water. She looked at each member of her bridge crew. These were good Zelani. They had served with honor. They did not deserve to die because she was too proud to ask for help. "Takara," she said finally, "open a channel to the human ship." The young communications officer looked surprised. "Captain?" "Do it." Takara's fingers moved over her controls. A few seconds later she nodded. "Channel open, Captain." Vexana took a deep breath. The words she was about to say would change everything. Once she spoke them, there would be no going back. But her crew was dying and she was their captain. Their lives mattered more than her pride. "Human vessel," she began. Her voice sounded steady, but inside she felt sick. "This is Captain Vexana of the Zilani ship Cathara. We request trade negotiations." She could not say the words "help us" or "we are dying." That would be too much shame. Instead, she had to make it sound like business. Like the humans had something she wanted to buy, not something she desperately needed to live. "We offer valuable trade goods in exchange for water supplies," she continued. "We have quantum processors, star charts, and refined tritium. Please respond." Tekara closed the channel. The bridge was silent except for the weak hum of the failing life support systems. "Will they answer?" young Tekara asked. Vexana did not know. Humans were strange. They might help, or they might see this as a chance to take advantage of desperate Zilani. Some species would demand everything in exchange for water. Others might simply fly away and leave them to die. "We wait," Vexana said. She sat in her captain's chair and stared at the small dot of light on the screen. That tiny human ship held the lives of her entire crew. In a few hours, she would learn what humans were really like. She would learn if they had honor, or if they were as wild and selfish as most Zilani believed. The stars continued to shine cold and far away. The Cathara drifted through empty space, and Captain Vexana waited for an answer that would decide if her people lived or died. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking coffee when the alarm went off. He set down his cup and walked to the bridge of his ship, the Lucky Strike. It was not a big ship or a fancy ship, but it was his ship. He had been flying cargo runs for 15 years, and the Lucky Strike had never let him down. "What do we have, Lisa?" he asked. Lisa Park looked up from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and quick fingers. She had been his communications officer for 3 years. "Distress signal, Captain." "But it's weird." Jake sat in his captain's chair. It was old and the padding was worn thin, but it was comfortable. "Weird how?" "It's from a Zilani ship. They're asking for trade negotiations." Danny Cruz whistled. He was the ship's engineer, a big man with oil-stained hands and a kind heart. "Zilani don't trade with humans. They think we're too dumb. That's what makes it weird," Lisa said. She played back the message. The alien voice was formal and cold, but Jake could hear something else underneath. Stress, maybe fear. Amy Foster came onto the bridge carrying her medical bag. She was the ship's doctor, a small woman with gray hair and gentle eyes. "Did someone say Zilani? I've never seen one of their ships before." Jake listened to the message again. The Zilani captain talked about trade goods and water supplies. She mentioned quantum processors and star charts, expensive stuff, the kind of things that could make a cargo captain rich. But something was wrong. The way she said water supplies made Jake think, why would an advanced alien species need to trade for water? Their ships had the best recycling systems in the galaxy. Everyone knew that. "Lisa, can you get a scan of their ship?" Jake asked. Lisa's fingers moved over her controls. "Getting something now. It's a big ship, military class, but the power readings are low, really low." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "How low?" "Life support is running at maybe 30%, and there are heat signatures that look like damage to the main systems." Now Jake understood. The Zilani weren't looking for trade. They were dying. Their proud captain couldn't ask for help directly, so she was pretending it was business. But Jake could read between the lines. "How far are we from them?" he asked. Danny checked his instruments. "About 4 hours at full speed." "Amy, what do you know about Zilani biology?" The doctor thought for a moment. "Not much. I know they need more water than humans do. Something about their scaled skin. If their recycling systems failed..." She trailed off. "They'd be in real trouble," Jake finished. Lisa looked worried. "Captain, I've heard stories about the Zilani. They're proud. Really proud. Some people say they attack ships that see them weak." Jake had heard those stories too. The Zilani had a warrior culture. They valued honor above everything else. To them, being helped by humans might be worse than dying. But people were dying over there. Maybe 40 or 50 Zilani. Jake had cargo holds full of medical supplies for the colony on Henderson's world. Those supplies included water purification tablets and IV fluids. He could spare some water containers too. "Danny, how much water can we spare?" Jake asked. The engineer scratched his beard. "We've got reserves. Could spare maybe 200 gallons without putting ourselves at risk." 200 gallons, It might not sound like much, but it could keep a ship's crew alive for weeks if they were careful. Jake made his decision. Set course for the Zilani ship. Best speed, Captain, Lisa said carefully. What if this is a trap? What if they're pirates pretending to be in trouble? Jake looked at the scan readings again. The Zilani ship was barely maintaining life support. If this was a trap, it was the most elaborate one he had ever seen. It's not a trap, he said. They're dying over there. Danny started working his controls. The Lucky Strike's engines hummed louder as they changed course. 4 hours to intercept, he said. Lisa, send them a message, Jake said. What should I say? Jake thought about it. The Zilani captain had tried to make this sound like business. If he played along, maybe she could keep her pride. Tell them we accept their trade offer, but don't mention payment. Just say we're on our way and we'll work out the details when we get there. Lisa sent the message. A few minutes later, they got a reply. The Zilani captain sounded surprised but grateful. She gave them docking instructions and promised valuable trade goods. Jake felt sorry for her. She was trying so hard to make this sound normal when everyone knew it wasn't. But he would play along, whatever it took to help those people. Amy, get ready for possible medical emergencies, he said. If their water has been gone for days, some of them might be in bad shape. Amy nodded and went to prepare her medical supplies. Danny went back to the engine room to make sure they had maximum speed. Lisa kept monitoring the Zilani ship's transmissions. Jake sat alone on the bridge and thought about what they were doing. The smart thing would be to report the Zilani ship's position to their own people and let them handle it. The safe thing would be to stay away from a potentially dangerous alien warship. But Jake had not become a cargo captain to do the smart or safe thing. He had become a captain to help people. It didn't matter if those people were human or alien. It didn't matter if they were proud or humble. They needed help and he could give it. The Lucky Strike flew through space toward the dying Zilani ship. In the cargo hold, water containers sat next to medical supplies, simple things that humans took for granted. But to the Zilani, they might mean the difference between life and death. Jake hoped the proud alien captain would let him help her. He hoped her honor code would allow her to accept what she needed. Because in 4 hours he was going to find out what kind of people the Zilani really were. And they were going to find out what kind of people humans really were. The stars wheeled slowly overhead as two ships moved toward each other through the cold darkness of space, one carrying desperation and failing hope, the other carrying water and the simple human desire to help. The Lucky Strike docked with the Kethara with a soft clang of metal against metal. Jake Morrison stood at the airlock wearing his best uniform. It was not fancy, just clean coveralls with his captain's bars on the collar. Behind him, Danny Cruz pushed a cart loaded with water containers. The Zilani airlock opened with a hiss. Jake's first breath of their air made him wrinkle his nose. It smelled wrong, hot and dry like a desert wind. The recycling systems were definitely failing. Captain Vexana stood waiting for them. Jake had never seen a Zilani before, and she was impressive. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with dark green scales that covered her from head to toe. Her eyes were bright yellow and very intelligent. She wore a military uniform that looked expensive and well-made, but Jake could see the signs of dehydration. Her scales looked dull and rough. The skin around her eyes was tight. She moved carefully, like someone trying to hide pain. 2 Zilani guards stood behind her. They carried weapons but kept them pointed down. Jake appreciated that. It showed they wanted peace even though they looked ready for trouble. Captain Morrison, Vexana said. Her voice was deep and formal. Welcome aboard the Kethara. I am Captain Vexana. We are grateful you answered our trade request. Jake nodded politely. Happy to help, Captain. This is my engineer, Danny Cruz. Danny stepped forward and nodded. The water containers on his cart made soft sloshing sounds. Vexana's eyes fixed on those containers. Jake saw her throat move as she swallowed. But when she spoke, her voice stayed calm and professional. I have prepared a list of trade goods, she said. She held out a datapad. Quantum processors, stellar navigation charts, refined tritium, all valuable items. Jake looked at the list. Danny whistled softly behind him. The stuff on that pad was worth more than the Lucky Strike and all her cargo combined. Way more than a few containers of water. Captain, Jake said gently, you don't need to give us all this. Vexana's yellow eyes narrowed. I do not understand. Do you find the offered goods insufficient? No, ma'am. They're more than sufficient. They're too much. The Zilani captain looked confused. Behind her, the guards shifted nervously. One of them whispered something in their own language. Jake realized he was handling this wrong. The proud alien captain was trying to make this look like normal business. If he refused her payment, it would make it obvious that this was charity. And from what he had heard about Zilani culture, that would be a terrible insult. But he could not take technology worth millions of credits for a few containers of water. That would be theft. How about this, Jake said. Let us get your people the water they need first. Then we can talk about fair payment. Vexana hesitated. You wish to deliver the goods before receiving payment? That's right. Danny, start moving those containers. Danny began lifting water containers off the cart. Each one held 5 gallons of clean, pure water. Jake had brought 20 containers, more than enough to keep the Zilani crew alive until they could reach a proper station. Wait, Vexana said sharply. I have not agreed to your terms. Jake paused. The Zilani captain looked upset, almost angry. He was making another mistake, but he could not figure out what it was. Captain, your people need water now. We can work out the details later. No. Vexana's voice was hard. State your terms now. What do you want in return? Jake spread his hands. Nothing. Just take the water. The effect was immediate. Vexana stepped back like Jake had slapped her. The guards raised their weapons halfway. One of them started speaking rapidly in Zilani. You will state your terms, Vexana said. Her voice was dangerous now. What territory do you claim? What service do you demand? What do you want? Jake finally understood. In Zilani culture, there was no such thing as a free gift between strangers. Everything had a price. If he would not name his price, they thought he was planning something terrible. Captain, I don't want anything from you, Jake said. Your people are dying. We have water. It's that simple. Nothing is that simple, Vexana snapped. You are human. Your species is known for trickery. Name your price or leave my ship. The situation was getting worse. Jake could see other Zilani crew members watching from the corridor. They looked weak and sick, but their eyes were full of suspicion and fear. Danny stepped up beside Jake. Captain, he said quietly. Maybe we should explain about humans, Jake nodded. Captain Vexana, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Humans do things differently than other species. How so? When we see people in trouble, we help. We don't always ask for payment. It's just how we are. Vexana stared at him. That is impossible. No species gives aid without expecting something in return. Humans do. Then you are fools. Jake smiled. Maybe, but we're fools with water and you need water. So how about you let us be fools? For a long moment, nobody moved. Jake could hear the labored breathing of the Zilani crew in the corridor. Somewhere in the ship, a child was crying. The sound made Jake's heart hurt. Finally, Vexana spoke. If you give us water for nothing, what does that make us? Alive, Jake said simply. Vexana closed her eyes. When she opened them again, Jake saw something different there. Not anger or suspicion, but a kind of desperate confusion. I do not understand your species, she said quietly. That's okay. You don't have to understand us. You just have to let us help. Danny had been standing quietly with the water containers. Now he stepped forward. Ma'am, if it helps, think of it as a loan. You can pay us back someday when you're able. Vexana looked at him sharply. A loan? Sure. When you get back to your people, send us something nice. A book about Zilani culture, maybe, or some of your music. We're not picky. Jake saw the change in Vexana's expression. Danny had given her a way to accept help without losing face completely. It was still charity, but it was charity with a promise of eventual payment. A loan, Vexana repeated slowly, with payment to be determined later. Exactly, Jake said. Now can we please get your people some water before somebody dies? Vexana nodded once sharply. Very well. Honor guards, stand down. Engineer Mortak, assist the humans with distribution. A Zilani with darker scales came forward. He looked at the water containers like they were made of gold. Danny started explaining how much each crew member should drink and how often. Jake watched as the first Zilani took a careful sip of water. The alien's eyes closed in relief. Within minutes, the word had spread through the ship. The humans had brought water. As Jake watched the Zilani crew line up for their rations, he felt good about what they were doing. It did not matter that the aliens did not understand human generosity. It did not matter that they thought he was a fool. People were alive who would have been dead. That was enough. Lisa Park found Captain Vexana standing alone in the observation deck of the Zilani ship. The alien captain stared out at the stars through a large window. Her scales looked better now after drinking water, but her yellow eyes seemed troubled. "Captain Vexana," Lisa said softly, "may I speak with you?" The Zilani turned. She was very tall and Lisa had to look up to meet her eyes. "You are the human communications officer." "Yes, ma'am." "Lisa Park," she paused. "You seem upset about something." Vexana was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Your captain has created a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Among my people there is a concept called Kethmore. It means a debt that cannot be repaid. When someone saves your life and asks for nothing in return, you become their property. You owe them everything." Lisa felt her stomach drop. "Oh, I don't think Captain Morrison knows about that." "Of course he does not. Humans are young. You do not understand the old ways." Vexana turned back to the window. "But ignorance does not change the law. My crew and I now belong to him." "That's not what he wants," Lisa said quickly. "He just wanted to help. What he wants does not matter. What matters is what he has done." Vexana's voice was bitter. "We are Zilani. We have ruled star systems when your species was still living in caves. Now we are slaves to a human cargo captain." Lisa thought about this. She understood why Vexana was upset, but there had to be a solution. "What if we found a way for you to pay him back?" "With what?" "He refused our quantum processors. He refused our star charts. He refused everything of value we possess. Maybe he doesn't want valuable things. Maybe he wants something else." Vexana looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" Lisa was not sure how to explain. She thought about Captain Morrison and what made him happy. He liked helping people. He liked learning new things. He liked simple pleasures. "What if you taught us something?" Lisa suggested. "Not technology or weapons, just knowledge." Meanwhile, in the engine room, Danny Cruz was working with the Zilani engineer Mortuck. The alien was about Danny's size but covered in dark green scales. He had been watching Danny work on their water recycling system with great interest. "Your repair methods are very strange," Mortuck said. His English was careful but clear. Danny grinned. "Strange how?" "Simple. Direct. We would have replaced the entire filtration array. You have fixed it with spare parts and metal tape." "Sometimes simple works better than fancy," Danny said. He tightened a connection with his wrench. "Your people build great stuff, but you make it too complicated." Mortuck tilted his head. "Complicated is better. More reliable, is it?" Danny pointed to the water recycler they had just fixed. "This thing broke because it had too many backup systems. When one failed, it confused the others. Now it's simple and it works." The Zilani engineer stared at the machine. Danny could see him thinking. "You may be correct," Mortuck said slowly. "But this goes against our training. Sometimes you got to go against training. That's how you learn new things." Mortuck was quiet for a while. Then he said, Would you teach me more of these simple methods?" Danny smiled. "Sure thing, buddy. Always happy to share." In the medical bay, Amy Foster was treating the worst cases of dehydration. Most of the crew was doing better after drinking water, but 3 Zilani were still in serious trouble. Their bodies had started shutting down. Amy worked quickly with IV lines and fluid replacement. The Zilani medical officer, a female named Silara, watched everything she did. "Your techniques are primitive," Silara said, but her tone was curious, not insulting. "Maybe," Amy agreed, "but they work." She checked the IV drip on one patient. "How do your people usually treat severe dehydration?" "We prevent it. Our medical science focuses on stopping problems before they begin." "That's smart. But what do you do when prevention fails?" Silara hesitated. We do not have good methods for that situation. Our biology makes dehydration very dangerous. Usually if prevention fails, the patient dies." Amy nodded. "That explains a lot. You've never needed emergency treatment because your prevention was so good. But when your water systems failed, we had no way to save the worst cases." Silara watched as Amy's patient began to improve. "This human method, it actually works. Want me to show you how to do it?" Silara's eyes widened. "You would teach me?" "Of course. Medical knowledge should be shared." Back on the observation deck, Lisa was still talking with Captain Vexana. She had explained more about human culture and why Captain Morrison had helped them. "So your captain expects no payment at all?" Vexana asked. "He expects you to help someone else someday if you can," Lisa said. That's how humans think about it. We help each other. Even strangers, especially strangers. Anyone can help their family. It takes something special to help people you don't know. Vexana considered this. This concept is difficult for us to understand, I know. But maybe that's okay. Maybe you don't have to understand it completely. Captain Morrison's voice came over the ship's communication system. All Lucky Strike crew, please report to the docking bay. Lisa stood to go, but Vexana stopped her. Miss Park, if your captain truly wants no payment, how can I preserve my honor? Lisa thought about it. Maybe honor isn't about never owing anyone anything. Maybe it's about using what you've been given to help others. She left Vexana standing by the window, staring out at the stars and thinking. When Lisa reached the docking bay, she found Captain Morrison talking with his crew. Danny was explaining the repairs he had made. Amy was discussing the medical treatments. Everyone looked satisfied with their work. How are they doing? Captain Morrison asked Lisa. Better. The water helped a lot. But Captain, we need to talk about their culture. There's something called Kethmore. Lisa explained what she had learned. Captain Morrison listened carefully, his expression growing more serious. So by helping them, I've made them feel like slaves? He asked. Sort of. They think they owe you everything now. Captain Morrison rubbed his chin. Well, that's a problem. How do we fix it? Danny spoke up. Their engineer wants to learn human repair techniques. Maybe that's something. Amy nodded. Their doctor is interested in our emergency medicine too. Captain Morrison smiled slowly. So they want to learn from us, and we could learn from them. He looked at Lisa. Think Captain Vexana would go for a trade of knowledge instead of goods? Maybe, if we present it right. Captain Morrison headed for the door. Let's go find out. Time to have another talk with our new Zilani friends. As they walked through the corridors of the alien ship, Lisa hoped they could find a solution. The Zilani were proud people with strict rules about honor and debt. But maybe, just maybe, they could find a way for everyone to feel good about what had happened. After all, the best trades were the ones where everyone got what they really needed. Captain Morrison found Vexana in the main corridor of her ship. She was watching her crew work at their stations. The Zilani looked much better now. Their scales had color again, and they moved with more energy. Water had saved them all. Captain Vexana, Jake said. Could we talk privately? She nodded and led him to a small room off the main corridor. It was her ready room, Jake realized. The walls were covered with star charts and awards. Everything was neat and organized, just like he expected from a military officer. I understand there's a problem with our arrangement, Jake began. Vexana's yellow eyes fixed on his face. Your communications officer explained Kethmore to you. She did. And I want to fix this. There is no fix. The debt exists. You saved our lives and asked for nothing. By our law, we belong to you now. Jake sat down in one of the chairs. It was built for someone taller than him, but it was comfortable enough. What if I did ask for something? Vexana looked surprised. Now, after the fact? Why not? Maybe I was just being polite before. Maybe I wanted to see what kind of people you were before I named my price. The Zilani captain sat down across from him. She was quiet for a long moment, thinking. What would you ask for? Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a metal sculpture he had seen in the ship's common area. Simple but beautiful, about the size of his hand. It showed a Zilani family standing together under stylized stars. I'd like this, he said, setting it on the table between them. Vexana stared at the sculpture. That it has no value. It is just decoration. It has value to me. It's beautiful and it shows me something about your people. You could have quantum processors worth millions of credits. And you want a piece of common art? Jake nodded. That's what I want. Vexana picked up the sculpture and turned it over in her hands. Jake could see her thinking hard. In her culture, this exchange would mean something different than what he intended. The art piece was worth nothing compared to the water he had given them. That would make it an insult, or it would make it priceless. If I give you this, she said slowly, it would be payment far beyond the value of what you provided. Would it? Yes, this sculpture was made by my daughter. It represents my family line. To give it to an outsider, she paused. It would be a great honor, Jake smiled. Then it sounds like fair payment to me. But he was not done yet. He pulled out a data pad and set it beside the sculpture. There's one more thing I'd like to ask for. Vexana looked at the pad. What is this? A blank data storage device. I was hoping you could teach my crew about Zilani navigation methods. Not your military secrets, he added quickly. Just the basic techniques your people use to read star patterns. You want knowledge. My engineer has been sharing repair techniques with your engineer. My doctor has been teaching your medical officer about emergency treatment. Seems fair that we should learn something from you too. Vexana was quiet for a long time. Jake could see her working through the implications. If this became an exchange of knowledge instead of charity, it would change everything. Both sides would be giving and receiving. Both sides would benefit. Your crew would learn our navigation methods, she said carefully, and our crew would learn your simple solutions. That's the idea. This would be a trade between equals. Exactly. Vexana picked up the sculpture again, and this would be payment for the water. A very generous payment. She stood up and handed him the sculpture. Very well, Captain Morrison. I accept your terms. Jake took the sculpture and shook her hand. Her grip was firm and strong. Thank you, Captain Vexana. For the next 3 hours, the crews of both ships worked together. Vexana taught Lisa and Jake about reading stellar drift patterns and finding navigation markers in empty space. Her methods were elegant and precise, based on thousands of years of exploration. In return, Danny showed Mortok more simple repair techniques. How to fix complex systems with basic tools. How to make temporary repairs that would last longer than permanent ones. The Zilani engineer was fascinated by human practicality. Amy worked with Silara on emergency medical procedures. The Zilani doctor learned quickly, asking smart questions about fluid replacement and emergency stabilization. In exchange, she shared Zilani knowledge about preventing medical emergencies before they started. When it was time for the ships to separate, both crews gathered at the docking port. Jake stood with his people on one side, Vexana with hers on the other. Captain Morrison, Vexana said formally, this has been a profitable exchange. Yes, it has. Safe travels, Captain. Before you go, Vexana said. She switched to broken but understandable English. You gave water before asking. You gave honor after understanding. Jake was not sure what she meant, but it sounded important. Thank you. The ship separated slowly. Jake watched the Kithara grow smaller on his screen until it was just another point of light among the stars. Then he went to his quarters and placed the small sculpture on his desk. 3 months later, Jake was on a supply run to the Henderson colony when a package arrived for him at the space station. There was no return address, but inside he found something amazing. It was a water purification device unlike anything he had ever seen. Small enough to fit in his hand, but according to the specifications, it could purify 1,000 gallons of water per day. The technology was far beyond anything humans had developed. There was a note with it, written in careful English, for teaching humans that kindness requires wisdom. Jake smiled and installed the device in his ship's water system. He did not know if he would ever see Captain Vexana again, but he hoped her travels were safe and her crew was well. A year later, reports began filtering through human space about Zilani ships helping other species with emergency repairs. Always in exchange for knowledge, never for free, but always fair exchanges that helped everyone involved. Jake heard these reports and smiled. The Zilani were still proud, still formal, still concerned with honor, but they were learning that helping others did not have to mean losing face. Sometimes it meant gaining something even more valuable. On his desk, the small sculpture continued to show a Zilani family standing together under the stars. But now Jake understood that it showed something else too. It showed the moment when two very different species learned to understand each other. Not completely. Maybe they never would understand each other completely, but enough to help when help was needed. Enough to trade knowledge instead of just goods. Enough to see past their differences to the things they shared. Water. Knowledge. The desire to survive, and help their people survive. The need to maintain dignity while accepting help. These were not human things or Zilani things. They were universal things. Things that mattered to any species intelligent enough to build ships and sail between the stars. Jake Morrison continued flying cargo runs through human space, but now he carried something extra in his ship's database. Zilani navigation techniques that could help human ships find their way through the most dangerous parts of space. And somewhere in Zilani space, a proud captain carried human repair methods that could fix any machine with simple tools and practical thinking. The exchange was complete. Both sides had given. Both sides had received. Both sides had maintained their honor and their dignity. It was, Jake thought, exactly the way trade between species should work. Not one side taking advantage of the other, but both sides sharing what they had and learning what they needed. The stars continued to shine cold and distant. But between them, ships of different species carried the knowledge and friendship that made the galaxy a little warmer and a little less empty. And in the end, that was worth more than all the quantum processors and star charts in the universe.